I'm disturbed that he's been a big fan of taking people's property, civil asset forfeiture, without a conviction. Many poor people in our country have cash taken from them, and then the government says, prove to us where you got the cash, and then you can get it back. But the burden's on the individual. It's a terrible thing called civil asset forfeiture, and he's a big fan of that.
My administration will stand side by side with the American Catholics to promote the values we all share as Christians and Americans. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. We will make America great again.
Let's be frank. A dangerous movement, undetected by many, but real, is now challenging and eroding a great tradition of religious freedom. There can be no doubt. It's no little matter. It must be confronted intellectually, politically, and defeated.
Recently, a new religious liberty task force in America was founded by former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and he asked Catholic Archbishop Joseph Kurtz to aid in implementing the task force. The headline was that Jeff Sessions announces a religious liberty task force to combat dangerous secularism. In Googling the definition of secularism, this is what you'll find: the principle of separation of the state from religious institutions. So Jeff Sessions has made a religious liberty task force in order to combat those who believe in the principle of separation of church and state. Sounds to me like it was made to do the opposite of what it is supposed to do. And just to verify that secularism is a rejection of separation of church and state, we notice here on December 14th, William Barr was nominated by Trump to be the next Attorney General. Notice the following article concerning Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General. Theocracy alert. Trump's Attorney General pick, William Barr, is a Catholic conservative who rejects the separation of church and state and calls secularists fanatics and blames secularism for the moral decline. So now there's a religious task force to combat secularists who deny church and state for potential top lawyer in the United States, William Barr, who actually believes in a union of church and state. Let's examine where this task force is leading. Recently, with Matt Whitaker as acting Attorney General, the Trump administration is refusing to release documents concerning the Religious Liberty Task Force. And this is just what was predicted over 120 years ago by the author of The Great Controversy. She wrote, "The Sunday movement is now making its way in darkness. The leaders are concealing the true issue, and many who unite in the movement do not themselves see whither the undercurrent is tending." Most can't see it because the Sunday issue is making its way in darkness. Many don't see it and won't see it, but we can see it. As we will document here, the same game plan is being played out in Europe. Perhaps some are unaware, but France has a religious liberty task force. What is a religious task force for?
We got a good bitter tug of war starting today's French newspapers. Flo's here on set with more. This is the government ban on working on Sundays, isn't it, Flo?
That's right. And this Sunday, several home improvement stores decided to brave that ban. And this has caused quite an uproar that's continuing to get a lot of attention here today. Let's take a look at Libération that talks about Sacred Sunday. And Libération says having Sunday be a work-free day is an essential part of people's social and family lives, but it's colliding with the labor market and France's competitiveness. So how can you reconcile the two? Libération takes a closer look and says that it is indeed possible to reconcile the two. Now, La Croix points out that the government has decided to launch a task force to study this matter and to clarify the law.
The task force in France is to clarify banning shopping on Sunday and how to enforce the law. Does that sound like religious liberty? Is it making more sense where this religious liberty task force might be heading? It's more like a war against religious liberty. Though the Sunday movement is certainly moving in darkness, you can see it right under your eyes. Jeff Sessions may not come out and say that they are about to establish Sunday laws in America, but remember, they are concealing the true issue. They are refusing to release the documents about their Religious Liberty Task Force. If we remember the mark of the papacy is Sunday keeping, and their power over the state was taken away by France in 1798, at the end of the 42 months mentioned in Revelation 13:5, you'll see what seems to be that the wound being healed in France is the Pope seeks to regain that power. Macron has said himself plainly that these wounds of division between the church and the state need to be healed. Recently, after meeting with the Catholic bishop, Macron was asking the bishops for wisdom concerning the affairs of the state. We read the following from the paper, Taking the Catholic Pulse. Quote, in a country that has historically prided itself for its firm separation of church and state, Macron said the meeting defied skeptics on both sides by attempting to repair a tie that has been inconsistent through the years. In another article entitled French President Faces Backlash After Calling for Closer Ties Between Church and State, we read, the French President Emmanuel Macron has come under fire from political and secularist critics after calling for the country's notoriously divided church and state to mend their damaged relationship. If we've done so, it must be because somewhere we share the feeling that the link between church and state has been damaged, that the time has come for us, both you and me, to mend it, he said. And why is there such stress to heal these papal church and state wounds in Europe? It's about bringing Christianity back to the state power. Not a biblical Christianity, but the Catholic Christianity. And who and what is behind this movement? Clearly, it is a Catholic movement, and clearly it is a fulfillment of the words of Revelation 13 concerning the wounds of division between church and state and the power being given back. But it all starts in America. Notice what the Bible says concerning the second beast in Revelation 13, which represents apostate Protestant America. Some of this we went over in part 2, but it reads, He deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. That's the papacy, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image of the beast, or a copy of the papacy, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And this is exactly what America is saying. Let's make an image of the papacy, a copy of the church that ruled the state during the Dark Ages, a church whose mark of authority is Sunday. They're making a copy of it. Aren't they causing people to worship the first beast as we documented in part 2 by worshiping on Sunday? Aren't we giving obeisance to the beast by honoring its holy day? Regarding Trump's potential attorney general, William Barr wants to bring God's law back to America. God's law enforced by the state. Does he want to enforce adultery? Jesus said if you look at a woman in lust, you are breaking the law. Jesus said if you hate your brother, you're a murderer. Is he going to enforce the law of hatred? Is he going to read the thoughts and intents of the heart? Only God can enforce this law. You see, the penalty for that sin is death. Is he going to enforce that? Is this what he is planning to enforce? I think we should give God what is God's and let Caesar deal with civil law. It's obvious they want to enforce Catholic law. Remember, he's a Catholic, and furthermore, also remember the following. Sunday is our mark of authority. The church is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance from Saturday to Sunday is proof of that fact. That is the distinct mark in the law that William Barr calls God's law. However, it's the Catholic law. It isn't God's law. As we have been told in the book of Daniel regarding the papacy, he thinks to change times and laws, Daniel 7:25. Just as the Sabbath is a mark of God's authority as creator and lawgiver, and God wrote it in stone with his own finger, clearly the Catholic Church has a different law wrote in their catechism by the man of sin. William Barr wants to bring the papal law back to America. These words are being fulfilled. The Sabbath is about resting from labor, giving your hands a break. Some say it's actually works, but it's actually the opposite, it's rest. The Sabbath is about not buying and selling and giving others a break on that day. The Sabbath is about giving your mind a break and learning about the Creator. But the Sabbath is not Sunday, and we don't give to Caesar the opportunity to define that law, nor do we give to Caesar the opportunity to enforce it. God will enforce his own law. The beast or papacy desires you to worship on his holy day and use state power to enforce it. And finally, at the finish line, a decree will be made to have all worship according to the church and state's decree or be killed. Consider that William Barr is to be the top cop in America, appointed by Trump. We have to really wonder what the true agenda in America is. I think the Bible made it clear to those who let it explain itself. Quoting from the article again, we read, addressing a conference of governors on juvenile crime in Milwaukee on April 1st, 1992, Barr blasted public schools for no longer providing moral instruction. He asserted that public schools had undergone a moral lobotomy and blamed it on extremist notions of separation of church and state. Who is he blaming for immorality in America? Those who have extremist notions of separation of church and state. Isn't that what Pope Francis wants to join all world religions together for? To fight fundamentalists and extremists? And Donald Trump, when he went to visit the Pope, the goal was uniting together in order to fight extremism. Remember, Trump wants to unite with the Pope to do that. By the way, fundamentalist is defined as a Bible-believing Protestant if you look it up. So a Protestant is one who protests the union of church and state and the papal decrees that are made by it. Are you figuring out who the target is? Who the extremist is? It's you. It's the extremist secularists who protest the unity of church and state. The same ones that were destroyed during the Dark Ages by the papacy. And it is a movement making its way in darkness, and it must be protested. I think we might be called the troublers very soon, just as Elijah was. But remember the stories of all the others who stood before the kings of the earth, such as Daniel and Elijah. Truth is never a welcome thing to the world. In fact, they crucified the truth in 31 AD, using the kings of the earth, declaring these words, "We have no king but Caesar." That's fornication with the kings of the earth, just as the woman in Revelation 17. The article on Barr continues further. We read, about 6 months later, Barr struck again during an October 6, 1992 speech in Washington, D.C. to the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights, a traditionalist Catholic group. Barr called for the imposition of God's law in America. To the extent that a society's moral culture is based on God's law, it will guide men toward the best possible life, Barr said. He also attacked modern secularists for supposedly ushering in a cultural decline, remarking the secularists of today are clearly fanatics. I hope you're remembering what a secularist is. Remember Jeff Sessions' new religious task force to combat secularists? Or should I say to combat those who believe in a separation of church and state? If Barr is a Catholic and he wants God's law brought back to America, and we understand that the papacy has changed God's law, as it says in Daniel 7:25, then clearly this is talking about a coming Sunday law, just as the religious task force in France is to enforce Sunday. The same agenda is to be implemented in America. You see, Sunday laws are making their way in darkness, but the light of the prophecy of God's word is exposing the works of darkness. Notice what we read in the book of Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 11. It says, "Have no fellowship with the unfruitful work of darkness, but rather expose them, reprove them." The article concerning William Barr further states, he also attacked the Supreme Court's ruling in Lee v. Whiteman, a 1992 ruling that upheld the High Court's decision from 1962 and 63, barring public schools from compelling children to take part in prayer and worship. In other words, he believes in forced prayer and worship in schools. Remember part 1 where we talked about the 10 Commandments on school property and also Roy Moore and the new Alabama law on the 10 Commandments and what it means to make America great again?
And you're going to see in state after state after state, people that follow the model of Judge Moore.
Together we can make America great.
Remember how the model of Roy Moore, which is similar to that of William Barr, is to be the model of state after state in America? Because this is what they say will make America great again. This looks really good to the eyes of most people, just as the fruit on the tree did, restoring Christian values in America. In fact, Trump makes this point clear.
Washington politicians have been hostile to the church. They have been hostile to Catholics. They have been hostile to the members of Catholicism. My administration will stand side by side with the American Catholics to promote the values we all share as Christians and Americans. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. We will make America great again.
But this is the same as is being said to other countries. We need to return to Christian values that made Europe great. Yeah, when 50 million people were killed. What is Trump's motto? We need to return to Christian values that make America great again. And what values are those? They're Catholic values, Catholic laws. You see, William Barr was also for the Patriot Act.
And finally, on the president's nomination of William Barr, it's been noted that he has an expansive view of executive power. And when I heard that, I thought, uh-oh, he may have trouble getting Rand Paul's vote for confirmation. Am I correct?
Uh-oh is right. I'm concerned that he's been a big supporter of the Patriot Act, which lowered the standard for spying on Americans. And he even went so far as to say, you know, the Patriot Act was pretty good, but we should go much further. I'm disturbed that he's been a big fan of taking people's property, civil asset forfeiture, without a conviction. Many poor people in our country have cash taken from them, and then the government says, prove to us where you got the cash, and then you can get it back. But the burden's on the individual. It's a terrible thing called civil asset forfeiture, and he's a big fan of that. I haven't made a decision yet on him, but I can tell you the first things that I've learned about him being for more surveillance of Americans is very, very troubling.
This is what happened during the Dark Ages. Put the pieces together here and you'll understand. I know Trump is a nationalist and the Pope is a globalist. One's for climate agenda, the other isn't. But really, nationalism is only globalism on a smaller scale. And when we really get down to it, they both require us to give up our individualism and bow to the greater good of the state. Notice the following concerning Merkel of Germany and Macron of France. They join hands to make the planet great again. Well, Merkel in Germany has Sunday laws already made. In France, they recently made laws outlawing vehicle traffic on Sundays in an effort to save the planet. And that is what these laws will be about. And it will be finally declared that those who refuse to bow should be killed.
Mr. Trump, 17 days later, that actually happened. One of your supporters decided to sucker punch a protester.
The protester never sees it coming. He's wrestled to the ground by deputies. The guy who smacked him goes right back to his seat.
You bet I liked it.
Yeah? What'd you like about it?
Knocking the hell out of that big mouth. Yes, he deserved it. The next time we see him, we might have to kill him.
Do you plan on paying for the legal fees of this older gentleman in North Carolina who sucker punched the protester?
From what I understand, he was sticking a certain finger up in the air, and that is a terrible thing to do in front of somebody that, frankly, wants to see America made great again. And so we'll see. I'm going to take a look at it. But I want to see what that man was doing.
And that condones a sucker punch, though?
These are not people. Just remember that.
Do whatever you have to do to them. I don't care.
Because it is clear this is how we make America great again, by restoring it to its original Christian or Catholic values. And Donald Trump is making it happen. Furthermore, they are returning to the Catholic or Christian values that made Europe great. This is all pointing to Sunday laws. We'll talk more about this in the next part, where we get into the climate agenda and Sunday laws. And with all that has been documented so far, I pray that it is clear in our minds. What we need now are evangelists to get these things to the world, get these messages out. I'd like to share something that we need to consider carefully. It's from the book, The Great Controversy, chapter 37, entitled The Final Warning. Remember the final warning. There's no more warning after this one. I want you to notice something carefully, remembering we were told this was coming and that this was written over 120 years ago. It says, "Heretofore those who presented the truth of the third angel's message have been often regarded as mere alarmists. Their predictions that religious intolerance would gain control in the United States, that church and state would unite to persecute those who keep the commandments of God, have been pronounced groundless and absurd. It has been confidently declared that this land could never become other than what it has been, the defender of religious freedom. But as the question of enforcing Sunday observance is widely agitated, the event so long doubted and disbelieved is seen to be approaching, and the third message will have an effect which it could not have had before." Great Controversy, page 605. Notice that the question of enforcing Sunday observance is being widely agitated at this time. It's seen coming, but the warning, the final warning, is given right at this time. If you think you're going to wait till it actually happens, you will miss the final warning. You see, the next chapter is titled The Time of Trouble, and in that time probation is closed on the world. That means that now is the time. Don't wait until forced observance comes. We can see it now. We must give the final warning right now. while the issue is being agitated. Read the book and read the chapter. These things that were predicted are happening. It's like front page news. There's going to be martyrs in this time. The truth is about to shine. Get these warnings to the people. Show them that the time is now. And give this final warning. Share this video, like it, subscribe it, and remember, look up because Jesus is coming soon. See you in the next video.
Urge the downtrodden to change the world economic order, denouncing a new colonialism by agencies that impose austerity programs and calling for the poor to have the sacred rights of labor, lodging, and land.